One thing that makes a beautiful website is its typography, because a hero title is often the very first thing that we get to see when we land on a page. So I wanted to test if AI could generate some beautiful calligraphy or fonts for me, and I was going to use Midjourney since this is the most popular AI art tool at this point in time. If successful, I want to integrate some of this typography into my landing page, basically creating some large letters that I can then actually have as a hero title for my website on Editor X. I jumped into Discord and I created a new Imagine prompt. For this prompt, I wrote in that I was looking for a unique stylized letter T. I wanted the T to be large, and I also wanted it to have some nice design in the background. I requested it to be surrounded by plants as well as having some shapes and floating symbols. And these were the first few generations. Not too bad. I actually do like the design for these letters. There's only really one problem, and it's the fact that there was no letter T. These have a letter F, a letter H, I think it is, another H, and what looks like a B. But I'm looking to create the letter T for typography as my first letter, so I decided to give it another shot by writing in another prompt, more focused around the letter T by repeating it more often. This time I wrote that I was looking for a beautiful styled letter T. It has to be a letter T with plants growing around it, and there should be some soft gradients in the background. Midjourney created some more typography for me, but not quite exactly what I was looking for. While these letters look absolutely stunning, none of them are the letter T. This got me thinking, maybe Midjourney isn't that great at creating letters, or maybe just needs more chances. I had a look at the letter upscaled of this letter P here, and it looks fantastic. It's exactly what I'm looking for, but I want a letter T. So what I did was I jumped onto the web and pulled in a letter T from a URL, and I'm going to create a variation here. I want to plug in the letter T as a URL and see if it can create that variation for me. Ideally, it should be able to pull in that image of the letter T and then create that. Unfortunately, this didn't work either. I think it got the general topography of how the corner should be on that letter T, but it still created versions of letter P here, which again isn't what I'm after. So instead of creating new variations, I decided to create a brand new Imagine prompt. I copied in that URL from Google, and here I kind of got a letter T. The only problem was that while I added in the prompt that I wanted to still have some beautiful plants growing in and around the typography, that didn't look quite as remarkable as the letter P did originally here. This letter P looked awesome. So what I decided to do next is do a remix prompt, a blend between two images. I jumped in to grab the URL for the letter P with all its beautiful colors and everything there, and then I also wanted to combine it with the letter T that I found earlier on Google. These two I'm going to blend together using the /blend command on Midjourney, and hopefully this should generate something better. And it looks like the same issue is happening. The issue where the letter P, or almost looks like an F, is appearing rather than the letter T. I thought this could be because of the order in which I added the images. So I swapped them around, adding the first letter T as the first image so that it should take maybe more priority. And unfortunately, the results again came out with a lot of the letter P's coming out. I did get one hammer looking like T on the bottom left there, but still this isn't exactly what I want because we're losing all that really nice design aesthetic that we had earlier on. I decided to go back to the drawing board. I decided to add a new Imagine prompt saying letter T, just the letter T, a beautiful large letter T, and basically repeating myself over and over, hoping that Midjourney will identify the type of typography in the letter I'm trying to decide here. But once again, it just wasn't able to do this. I've got a sinking suspicion that we're just not going to be able to get this model to create the proper text, but I don't want to give up. Because I can tell that Midjourney can tell what a letter is, as well as one that looks kind of interesting and unique. And I want to just see if I can push the boundaries to force it to create at least a letter T. Because if I can do that, I can probably create all the other letters too. I did some digging on Reddit, and one user recommended to have the prompt say that it's a letter written on a piece of paper. When I tried this, I got some really interesting designs, but unfortunately, while they looked kind of like a letter T, I also think they kind of look like a letter J or an F or a H. Another user on Reddit recommended to get Midjourney to create it as a giant stone letter. So I put that as a prompt in, and unfortunately that didn't work either. I got quite a few letter B's instead. I was getting pretty frustrated, so I decided to have my next prompt here basically try and print out the word Tom, and I would repeat the letter T as well as the word with the letter T in there, with the text being T, a beautiful T, a large T. I just kept repeating the word and letter T over and over, just hoping that it would create something that resembled that letter. And to my absolute delight, I got a letter T. It wasn't absolutely perfect. It was a pretty mediocre design, but at least we have one variation with that letter in there. I continued researching. Another user recommended to add the letter multiple times, like TTT, and this would allow the AI to basically recognize that the letter needs to be in there, and this was what came out. It doesn't look that great. I don't think I could use this in a website, but at least I'm getting things that resemble the letter T a little bit closer than what I had before. Another thing you can do with Midjourney for creating AI art is add a column before the actual item you're trying to represent. So in this case, I added a column before the letter T, and then I said I wanted a letter T printed on a page as beautiful typography. Now I thought this would be very hyper specific, and hopefully it might come out with something that represents that letter on a page. It was also based on another recommendation on Reddit where users said that if, for example, you represent what you're looking for in a situation or a scene that it often is presented in, like for example writing a letter on a page or having a tree in a forest, then you're more likely to get accurate results. In terms of generating a really nice looking letter for use in typography, I think the AI did a wonderful job here. It looks really stunning in terms of having this letter on a page. It could be something I could use as art. The only issue here is that there were no letter T's. I got a letter what looks like D, maybe a H, but again, this is not even close to the letter T. So I think it's going to be back to the drawing board to try and figure this out. So the next thing I did was try to reuse a similar prompt having a beautiful handwritten letter T, but I added more context clues, saying that the T should be part of the calligraphy, it should be an uppercase T, it should be a T on a single page, and a lot more references to the letter T, just hoping that this would incite a better looking letter rather than these other letters we're getting. And I think what's interesting is for the most part, I did get things that kind of resembled the letter T. There is a bit of an F looking shape here or even a P looking shape, but the one on the bottom left almost resembles the letter T, which is pretty cool. Since this was a bit closer to what I'm looking for, I thought maybe I could use the trick I used earlier, where you add in multiple numbers of the letter in order to give it additional context. I decided to use a lowercase and uppercase T and repeat that throughout the prompt itself, hoping that it could possibly produce this as a thing on a written piece of paper. The result, however, was a little bit different than what I thought. It actually combined the two letters very close together, so they ended up making some sort of a unique shape, almost like the letter I or the letter F again. And I tried a few variations on this prompt, but no matter what I really tried, none of them really came out the way I wanted. I changed up tactics. I jumped into Figma and I decided to create two letter T's, one in an uppercase and one in a lowercase, that I could then export and actually import into Midjourney, hopefully using these as a reference of how I want the character to be styled. I exported these as a transparent PNG, and then I simply dragged and dropped them into the Discord and then used the URL that I get when I uploaded as part of the new prompt in order to get Midjourney to generate some styling on this type of a character based on the pre-existing prompts I had already placed, so I only really had to copy paste the URL at the start of the prompt. And here's the result. I think the fact that it was transparent caused the AI to get a little bit confused. So I decided to jump back into Figma and just use the single letter T, but also put it behind a white background that I could export together just as a simple JPEG. This should hopefully not confuse the AI too much as to what I want, and then maybe I can use the prompts to engineer something a bit more specific around this. Just like last time, I exported this JPEG and I made sure that it wasn't too large either. Then I exported it and I just did a JPEG this time and uploaded that back up into the Discord. Here we can see the letter T and the URL, which I'm going to use. And hopefully I should be able to just reuse the same prompt, but with this new URL. And let's see if the results are any better. And yes, I'm finally getting what looks like a letter T's. Here, I'm quite happy with 3 of them having a proper T structure. I'm not sure why that third one looks like a letter F, but I'll accept that there'll never be a perfect variation for this. At least this is a starting point again where I can get the AI Midjourney to essentially create a proper letter T's. I think the trick now will be seeing if I can combine it with other variations of letters and designs I've created, especially this letter P that I heard earlier. So what I'm going to do is grab the URL for this letter P, and I'm going to see if I can remix it with these other letters that I've now generated as variations. So to do this, I should be able to just select a variation with a V1 here. Then I'll need to update the prompt. I already have the URL of the existing letter T from Figma, and I want to add in the additional letter P with the nice design. Hopefully combining these two with a nice prompt will create a new unique design. So the good news is that we're definitely getting letter T's, which was the goal here. The bad news is that the style hasn't really applied. There's a little bit of those leaves and grass elements coming from the inside of the letter T, but not enough. This is where I tried to maybe swap around the images. Maybe it was taking more reference from the original image that is placed first. And this did seem to have an effect. I did get more styling around the letter T the second time when I put the styling first, but it wasn't doing a very good job. This is where we can use columns to essentially allow for having more, I suppose, weight in Midjourney. So what columns do is that you can add a column to a word or some specific image to present more or less weight with a number behind it. So what I decided to do was restructure the prompt and then add more weighting to the image letter P, which had all the nice designs behind it, while still complementing and blending it with the letter T that I originally had. The result here was a letter T that essentially had much more color and depth and styling to it than the previous iterations. So I think this is the trick to doing typography in Midjourney and using the AI to essentially blend 2 images. One as a reference image of what you want, one as a reference image of the text or the character that you want, and finally a good prompt behind it to describe the scene itself. Alright, now finally, to put this on a website, I'm going to copy the image and save it. Then I'm going to jump into Editor X and I'm going to upload the image. I want to create a section called Typography. However, right now this image doesn't work quite well because of the background. So what I did was open up Photoshop, and in here I pasted the image, and I want to remove the background, or at least set it to be the same as the one currently on my website. Sometimes you can do things like add in overlays to set the color, but here it won't exactly work. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to see if I can cut out the actual letter T here using the select option from Photoshop. Now I can't really select most of the background, there's just too much happening. So instead I'm going to use AI to essentially detect the letter T here and cut those segments out. Then after that I'll clear the rest of the background and just paste the letter T in here. Now there's probably more that could be done to make this look better, but this is just a quick example. So now I'll just save and export this as a simple JPG. I'll jump back into Editor X here and I'll upload the image once more, selecting the new one. As you can see, this one fits in much better with this website aesthetic, and now I just need to create a section for it. Here I can simply update this to be typography with the letter T at the very top, saying that AI can generate really cool typography. There are probably lots of other ways that this could be done and other types of characters that could be designed, but this should give you some inspiration to figure out how to build your own typography sets or even letters based on using AI. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.